My name is Jem Young, and I'm an engineering manager at Netflix. I created this course because I wanted people to understand all the component systems that go into building a modern web application. In this course, we're going to learn all about databases and how to choose the appropriate one for your use case. We're going to learn what terms like TCP and ICMP mean, and how these standards power the very internet we use every single day. We're going to dive into how to use WebSockets to create powerful real-time applications. From creating a load balancer to tuning your Nginx configuration, we're going to elevate our knowledge of a web server and learn how all these fundamental systems connect together to build a modern web application. So come with me and take the journey on becoming a full stack engineer. I hope you enjoy the course. So I'm going to say VI simple server. And this one is not a kind of random file like we touched. So this one's JS. So we're going to say simple server.js. I'm going to go to insert mode. So the first thing we need to import from Node is HTTP. So we're saying HTTP require HTTP. So that's just the library that allows us to make requests and response. And this is all built into Node. It's fantastic. We don't have to npm install anything. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to import fs, which is, again, built into Node, allows us to access the file system. fs, file system, pretty straightforward, just like HTTP, nothing groundbreaking. So fs. And we need to access the file system because, well, we're serving files. We don't actually need to, this isn't actually a necessary step. It is for this exercise, but I can actually just write a response back into, I can write data back to the response, and I never even need to create an HTML file. We're just doing it for this exercise because it's a little bit easier to grok the first time around. Maybe later we'll just write directly to responses, and we don't need any files at all. So next up, I'm going to be a good engineer, and I'm going to define my constants up top. And constants, we like to give all caps to let people know it's a constant and it won't change. But we define our port. Next, let's define our server. So we'll say const server equals HTTP, built-in library, and not complex. We're going to say create server. Pretty easy. And create server is going to take a function as an argument. Don't mind the way I code. I just like to close off my parentheses early because later I'll be like, why isn't this working? And it's always a missing bracket or parentheses, so I do it ahead of time. Say function. Again, I like to do this ahead of time. So every server, it doesn't matter if it's Node or Tomcats or try to think of Python with Django or Flask or Ruby or Rails. It doesn't matter. Every single server has two basic things. A request, we'll call it rec. You can call it request if you want. And a response, we'll call it res. These are fundamental things of every server. The request coming in, so if someone's making a request to your server, as we said, servers just respond to requests. And the response, what do we tell the request, the person asking? So naturally, when we need to write a response, what do we do it? We do it in the response. So we'll say res or response. We're going to write to the head, which I'll talk about what it means in a second. I'm going to close that off early. So we're writing to the head. So this means the response is made up of a lot of different parts, and maybe a little bit later we can do a console dir and we can dive into what a response actually looks like. It's very, very big. There's a lot of moving parts. But for now, we're going to write directly into that response, into the head of the response. So we're going to give it a 200. 200 is a status code. It just means, OK, everything's good, the most common status code. I'm so excited. We're going to dive way more into these things. We're going to talk about request and response. We're going to talk about status codes, why they're important. They seem trivial, but they're really important. But for now, we're just going to say everything's OK. And we want to be good citizens, so we want to give it a content type. So right now, we are writing a header. Content type. And it's text/HTML. And this is just to help the browser out, to let it know, what are we sending back? I think sometimes you can infer content. It depends on the browser. But we generally want to be as explicit as possible. So there, we just wrote a header as a part of the response. Headers are not part of the response body. They're just metadata attached to the response that says, hey, are you logged in? What are the cookies you have? What's the status code, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on about responses. But for now, we wrote 200 and we told it we're sending back an HTML file. Next, we're going to create a read stream. We're not going to write to it. We're just going to read. So we're going to say file system create a readable stream. And we're going to say this fictional file we haven't created yet called index.html. And we're just going to pipe it into the response. Yes?
There's a comment about wanting to get syntax highlighting in Vim, and someone said :syntax space on.
Let's try it. I'm a simple man of simple taste. So it's syntax dash on or just on?
Space on.
Hey, it's hard to see, but that is slightly purple. Pretty nice.
Yeah, it does look nice.
There's a way, so I think I copied and pasted this code out of VS Code, which copied my syntax over, but really want to get familiar with VI because this is where we're going to be writing all our code. And you can't use VS Code on your server. I mean, you can, but we'll talk about that too, how to do that. So that's our server. Great. Now what? Well, the server's not actually doing anything yet. It doesn't know where to listen. So we have to open that port for it and tell it which port to listen to. That's pretty straightforward. We're going to say server.listen. And we're going to use our constant up top. We'll call it port. And this is just for our own benefits. You don't have to write a console log, but it's nice to know when your server actually ran. Otherwise, it's just an empty process, or it just looks like an empty process. Port. And we're going to say $port. OK. There, you just wrote a Node server. And we walk through each one of these lines and see what they do. Most of these we're going to dive into a bit more about HTTP, headers, response codes, things like that. But for now, yeah, that's a server in a couple of lines. But to make it run, we're going to need a little bit extra software, which you may or may not have. Some of these things you may have if you code in your day-to-day. But if you don't, let's walk through how to actually run this right now. So I'm going to right quit. So the file we're missing right now is the index.html. We didn't write it. Let's see what the minimal response we can get to make it say actually work in a browser. So I'm going to say vi index.html. And I'm going to be a rebel here. I'm going to say hello world. And we'll see this totally invalid HTML. We'll see if it works in the browser. OK, next we need Node. I have Node installed. I like to check the version just in case. So I'm running Node 16. I think the latest is 19. Doesn't really matter for this case unless you're running something really old like 8. So now I'm going to say Node simple server.js. Hey, worked the first time. That almost never happens. Usually I'm missing like something, but this is only a few lines. And so let's navigate back to our browser. So we're going to use localhost. And we're going to say port 3000. The colon gives it a port. Oh, look at that. Our non-HTML page works. We need to create a new user. Because right now we're running as root. And the way you can tell you're running as root is, well, it says root here. Clear this. So it says root, but the other way you can always tell you're running root is there's an octothorpe right here, or a hash sign, whatever you want to call it. That's a surefire way of you're running as root. We don't want to run as root. Root does not double check anything we do. Root is like, OK, you know what you're doing. Root is the highest permission level on an operating system. It allows you to do anything and everything. You want to rm-rf / as in delete your directory, it'll let you do that and it will not stop you. So we never want to run things as root. If something does require root, that usually means like, hey, let's put some thought into it. So the first thing we do after we update our software, we're going to create a new user, a user that's not root, but has root access. We call root access super user. Usually, and we run the sudo command to say, I'm going to do this as root for this particular command. Sudo stands for super user do. It allows you to run the commands and programs as root. So it allows you to run as root as necessary, but our default is never, ever, ever to run as root. Ever, ever, ever. It's tempting because you're like, I hate sudoing all the time. It's such a pain. But it's there for a reason. These are well-trodden paths. So keep the permissions as minimal as possible that you need to run the programs. So next, we're going to create a new user because we don't want to run as root. So we're going to create a new user. We're going to add that user to the sudo group. We're going to switch that user. And then we're going to check sudo access just to double check that our user is actually working. Yeah, so if you did transfer your name servers over to DigitalOcean and they still haven't propagated out, it's just going to take a while. It can take a few hours. It can take a few seconds. It really varies on the internet. Like I don't. That's kind of all I can say. That's why we do it pretty early in the class rather than a little bit later. So you probably ran into some interesting things, creating a new user, some weird prompts. So let's walk through them. So we don't want to do things as root. Very, very dangerous. Never do things as root. If you have in the past, you got lucky. But again, not doing things as root will save you a lot of trouble and pain. So I want to create a new user. So I'm going to say add user. And let's call it gem to keep it simple. Give it a password. I keep mine pretty simple here too. For all these values, feel free to fill them in if you want. I'm just going to hit default. Information is correct. Cool. No worries there. You can put room number if you want. Not really going to change anything. I think it's just an artifact of Linux. Next thing we're going to do is we want to make sure I can do stuff as root, as gem, but only when I want to. So we're going to add the user gem to the user sudo group. So to do that, we're going to use the user mod command. So user modify. So user mod, we're going to say add -a to the group, capital G, to the sudoers group, super users do, gem. Awesome. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to switch over to gem user. So we're going to say su, switch user, gem. All right. And I'm still in the root, so I can go home if I want. You don't need to. And look, I have my own directory and everything once I create a user. So every time you create a user, it creates another directory under /home/whomever. Now we want to check our sudo access. To do that, there's a lot of ways of doing it, but I like to access the auth log. These are things you normally can't access as a regular user. You can only do as root. So let's just double check we have access. So I'm going to say sudo cat, remember that dumps the whole file, /var log. And we want to look at the auth log. It's going to ask me for the password. And there we go. So we've confirmed that this user has sudo access. We confirmed that it all works, and we have this new user. Great. Let's create a subdomain. Subdomains are really useful. For example, when I work on Netflix.com, I'm not directly developing on Netflix.com. I'm developing on our development environment. So it's going to be like dev.netflix.com or something like that. It's not accessible to the public, obviously. But that's the usefulness of a subdomain is you don't have to create an entirely new URL. That means you have to create new cookies, et cetera. When you use a subdomain, it's a subset of your main domain, but it's much easier to work with. You don't have to go through as much trouble. So let's create a subdomain called blog. Or you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it blog because it's easier to reason about. So it'll be blog.gemstack.lol. So the first thing we have to do is we have to create a record on DigitalOcean. Now you've already done that before, so I'll let you do that now. All right. So probably the hardest part is remembering where to look on DigitalOcean. But once you get to the domain, and if you want to cheat, you can say networking/domains, and it'll take you to the right place. And to create a record, we just say blog, and it's going to fill in the rest for me. Then I create the record. Great. But right now, it's not doing anything. Nginx doesn't know how to handle these requests. So we're going to need to create a new virtual server, or just another server to deal with this. We don't necessarily have to, but let's say I want to redirect my blog to an entirely different application. Like let's say I had a blog running in Django, written in Python, not necessarily directing to my node. So this way we can have multiple parts in your domain redirecting to entirely different applications using Nginx. So to create a server, create a new server. And this was what it's going to look like. So you remember where to create servers? That's in your /etc, Nginx, sites enabled. And just call it blog.yourdomain.com, or blog.fullstackfrontend. The name actually doesn't matter too much. All right, let's go and do this together, just in case you're wondering what are these things. Let's go over the Nginx virtual host config again. So what I'm going to do is clear. I'm going to sudo vi etc nginx sites enabled. And I'm just going to call it blog.fullstackfrontend. You can call it whatever you like, but it's really helpful if you're making a subdomain to prefix it with the name of the subdomain. All right. So next, I'm going to create a server block, and that starts with server. And I'm just going to close it off down here. You know me. Next, I want it to listen on port 80 for now. Listen 80. And then we're going to listen on 80, but on IPv6. And this is probably the most important part right here is you have to tell Nginx where to go based on the requests. So the requests are always going to be coming from blog.yourdomain.com. So we have to write that out explicitly. Because remember, this isn't the default server. This is a different server entirely from our default one we created earlier. So server name, and it's blog.gemstack.lol. Remember, that's your server name. Then all we do is do what we did before. We're going to use proxy pass and create a location block. So location to any request coming from blog. And for now, we're just going to proxy pass that. Because we're not going to create a new server for this entirely. But it's pretty easy to do it. And it's pretty easy to proxy pass to an entirely different port, entirely different system and service. So HTTP// I'm just going to use a shortcut of localhost instead of 127. You can use either one. And we're just going to proxy that to 3000. Again, when the first time you did this, you're like, oh, this is weird. You do it again, and you're like, okay, now I sort of see how Nginx server blocks work. The last thing we have to do is update our Nginx conf. Because remember, we didn't set it to pick up everything in our sites enabled block. We were really specific about it. So I'm just going to tab up and say sudo vi etc nginx conf. And we're going to create another line here for the include. The order doesn't really matter. So we're just going to say include that new server virtual host we created, Nginx, sites enabled, /blog.fullstackfrontend. And this, if you're running into trouble, this is probably the thing that we forgot. It's pretty easy to make this mistake. And the last one, and what do we have to do anytime we modify the configuration of a running process?
Restart it.
That's right. We have to restart it. And that one's the easy one. You're like, why isn't it working, Gem? Because we didn't restart it. Nginx doesn't know. So sudo service Nginx restart. And as always, we generally try to run the sudo nginx just to validate our configuration, but this one's pretty straightforward. But if you're running into issues like nginx is throwing up some sort of weird messaging, do nginx-t to validate your configuration. So now, I feel like this might have proxied fast enough. It might have updated fast enough. So blog.gemstack.lol. It may not have gotten there yet. Yep, it did. There, we just created a subdomain.